I never told my son what was really stored inside the old warehouse at the end of Harbor Point Marina. Not because I didn't trust him, because I didn't trust the people he might one day trust. 3 months after he married a woman who treated every family conversation like a business opportunity, she suddenly became obsessed with one building she'd never cared about before. Then, on a quiet Thursday evening, my shop manager called with panic in his voice. "Mr. Cole, your daughter-in-law just showed up at the East Warehouse. She's got a locksmith and a moving truck." I looked out at my backyard, where I was watering the tomato plants my late wife had planted years before she passed. Instead of panicking, I smiled. I'd spent weeks making sure this exact moment would happen. "Let her inside," I said calmly. "Don't stop her. Whatever happens, nobody interferes." There was a long silence. "You sure, boss?" "I'm positive. Tonight she'll finally discover what happens when greed mistakes patience for weakness." My name is Thomas Cole. I'm 68 years old. For 45 years I built Cole Harbor Marine Repair from a single rented dock and an old pickup truck that barely made it across town. People look at these gray hairs and think they've got me figured out. An old mechanic, a quiet widower, a man who fixes broken boats and minds his own business. They don't see the decades behind these hands. The nights sleeping in my truck after storms destroyed customer boats. The winters when my wife, Eleanor, and I skipped dinner so payroll checks wouldn't bounce. Every dollar I own has grease, salt water, and sacrifice attached to it. Nothing came easy, especially not trust. After Eleanor passed away 4 years ago, my entire world became my son, Ethan. He's 35 now, kind-hearted, honest, too honest. He believes people mean what they say. I've spent my whole life learning that many don't. When Ethan married Lauren, I wanted nothing more than for them to build a happy life together. At first, she seemed charming, confident, always smiling. She called everyone family. But after the wedding, something changed. She stopped asking about me. She started asking about my property. The first time my instincts warned me came during a family dinner downtown. Everything felt normal until Lauren casually leaned back in her chair. "So, I drove past your marina yesterday." I nodded. "It's looking good." She smiled. "I noticed that old warehouse near the east docks." I kept cutting my steak. "What about it?" "It seems like wasted waterfront property." She laughed softly. "You ever think about selling it?" "It has amazing development potential." I looked at Ethan. He didn't notice anything unusual. He simply smiled at his wife. "I told her you've owned that place forever." Lauren continued. "I know several investors who'd probably pay an incredible price." I took a sip of water before answering. "It's just storage. Nothing exciting." She nodded, but her eyes didn't. Her smile disappeared for less than a second, long enough for me to notice disappointment. That single look told me far more than her words ever could. The next morning they showed up at my house, carrying coffee and pastries. Lauren unfolded a glossy presentation across my kitchen table. Charts, property estimates, tax calculations, colored maps. She'd already researched everything she legally could. "Thomas," she said warmly, "you're paying taxes on a building that hardly gets used. I could connect you with developers. They'd handle everything. You'd retire comfortably." Ethan looked excited. "Dad, I think she's just trying to help." I slowly turned each page. I acted impressed. I asked questions. Then I closed the folder. I never make decisions the same day. "Leave it with me." Lauren smiled, but I could almost hear the frustration hiding behind it. As they stood to leave, I noticed her glance toward the hallway, specifically toward the fireproof cabinet where I keep important documents. Most people would have missed it. I didn't. That afternoon, I called my shop manager, Frank. Frank had worked beside me for nearly 20 years. If I trusted anyone outside my family, it was him. "I need copies of the warehouse paperwork." Only the public documents. Nothing confidential. Frank paused. You planning something? I think someone is planning something. I just intend to be ready. Over the next 2 weeks, Lauren became strangely interested in everything I owned. She'd casually ask about insurance, old equipment, property values, storage units, even boats I'd sold years earlier. None of the questions sounded suspicious by themselves. Together, they painted a very different picture. Meanwhile, Ethan noticed nothing. He believed she was simply learning the family business. I wished he were right. One Tuesday morning, I stopped by Ethan's marine supply store with breakfast. Before I reached the entrance, I saw a tow truck hooking onto his delivery van. Ethan stood beside it looking completely confused. Dad, they say we're behind on payments. That can't be right. Lauren handles all our business accounts. The driver simply shrugged. Payment stopped months ago. We're here to recover the vehicle. Before I could speak, Lauren came racing into the parking lot. She looked terrified, not embarrassed. Terrified. She argued with the finance company for nearly 15 minutes before somehow convincing them to delay the repossession. Ethan hugged her. He thanked her for fixing everything. She hugged him back. But while his face rested against her shoulder, I saw hers. There wasn't relief. There was fear. Real fear. The kind that comes from someone desperately trying to keep a much bigger secret alive. Standing there, watching my trusting son comfort the very person hiding the truth from him, I realized something. Lauren wasn't looking for an opportunity anymore. She was looking for an escape. The next Friday, Ethan and Lauren showed up at my house carrying overnight bags. Lauren forced a nervous smile. Our apartment had a plumbing leak, she explained. The insurance company says it'll take a few days before we can move back in. I simply nodded. Stay as long as you need. If someone is desperate enough to steal, the last place they want to be is far away from what they're trying to find. That first night, I barely slept. Around 2 in the morning, I heard the third step on my staircase creak. I've lived in that house for 40 years. I know every sound it makes. I quietly stepped into the hallway. A thin beam of light leaked from beneath the study door. Lauren. She was kneeling beside my fireproof document cabinet with a flashlight between her teeth. She wasn't searching randomly. She knew exactly which drawer she wanted. I waited until she managed to slide it open. Then I flipped on the hallway light. She nearly jumped out of her skin. Lauren? She spun around, breathing hard. Oh, Thomas. I couldn't sleep. I was looking for the bathroom. I looked toward the hallway. The bathroom is the other direction. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she laughed awkwardly. I guess I got turned around. I smiled politely. It happens. She hurried upstairs. The second she disappeared, I checked the cabinet. One folder had been moved. Only one. Exactly the folder I expected. The bait had worked. The following morning, I hired a private investigator named Daniel Mercer. I'd worked with him years earlier during a fraud case involving stolen marine engines. 3 days later, we met at a quiet diner near the harbor. He placed a thick envelope on the table. You were right to be concerned. My stomach tightened. What did you find? He opened the file. Lauren's marketing business is practically non-existent. Most of her online success is manufactured. Leased luxury car, borrowed office space, fake client testimonials. Everything is built to look successful. He slid another page toward me. She's also carrying nearly $200,000 in personal debt. I stared at him. How? Bad investments, private lenders, high-interest loans, and... He paused. Money disappearing from Ethan's business account. I closed my eyes. I was afraid you'd say that. Daniel nodded. Small transfers. Spread over months. Easy to overlook. But together, they're enough to sink his business. I felt something inside me harden. She wasn't simply chasing my property anymore. She was quietly destroying my son's future. Daniel leaned closer. I can take everything I've found directly to the police. I shook my head. No. They'll arrest her. Ethan will think there's been some mistake. He'll defend her. He needs to see the truth with his own eyes. Daniel slowly nodded. I understand. That afternoon, I returned to the marina. Frank was waiting inside my office. You've got that look again, he said. The one you get before making somebody regret underestimating you. I smiled. I need your help. Within an hour, we created a convincing inventory report. It listed rare marine navigation systems, prototype boat electronics, historic engine components. Altogether, almost $500,000 worth of equipment. Every item was completely fictional. The paperwork looked authentic. Serial numbers, insurance references, storage locations, everything. The final page clearly stated, stored inside East Warehouse. Exactly what Lauren wanted to find. I placed the folder back into the cabinet, just visible enough for someone searching in a hurry. The second night she was in my house, she came back. This time I didn't leave my bedroom. Instead, I watched through the tiny security cameras Frank had secretly installed inside my study. Lauren opened the cabinet, found the folder. Read every page, then photographed each document with her phone. Her hands were shaking, not with fear, with excitement. She believed she'd just found the jackpot. When she quietly returned upstairs, I knew the hardest part was over. Now, all I had to do was wait. 2 days later, Frank called. Boss, I think your daughter-in-law has been hanging around the East Warehouse again. She drove past twice this morning. Didn't stop. Just watched. Good. Keep pretending nobody notices. That evening, Ethan left early for a supplier meeting. Lauren stayed behind. She thought I was working in the garage. Instead, I sat inside my truck across the street. A licensed investigator working with Daniel had already obtained legal authorization to monitor communications related to an ongoing financial fraud investigation. Less than 20 minutes later, Lauren made the phone call we'd been waiting for. I found it, she whispered. The old man was lying. The warehouse isn't empty. There's enough inside to solve everything. A man's voice answered. You've been wrong before. Not this time. I've got photographs. I know the access code. I can get us inside. The voice became quiet. When? Friday night. There won't be many people around. And your husband? Lauren didn't hesitate. He won't know anything. By the time he figures it out, I'll already be gone. Those words hit me harder than I expected. Not because she wanted my property, but because she was perfectly willing to leave Ethan behind, broken, bankrupt, and blamed for something he never did. That was the moment every bit of sympathy I still had disappeared. I ended the recording, called Frank, and quietly said, It's time. The trap we've been building is finally ready. Friday arrived without a single surprise. At least, not for me. I spent the afternoon working on an old fishing boat that had been sitting behind my shop for months. Anyone watching would have thought it was just another ordinary day. Exactly the way I wanted it. Around 6 that evening, I called Ethan. Can you meet me at the marina tonight? He sounded tired. Everything okay? I'll explain when you get here. He trusted me enough not to ask another question. Just before 11, we parked on a small service road overlooking the East Warehouse. The lights around the marina were dim. The water was calm. From a distance, the building looked abandoned. Ethan looked confused. Dad, why are we here? I handed him a tablet connected to the warehouse security cameras. What you're about to see isn't easy. Then I told him everything. Lauren's debts, the missing business money, the fake investment company, the investigator's report, the photographs she'd taken inside my study, the phone call, every single piece of evidence. At first he shook his head. No. She wouldn't. I didn't argue. I simply pointed toward the screen. Watch. At 11:47 p.m., headlights appeared at the end of the access road. A dark moving truck rolled slowly toward the warehouse. Another pickup followed behind it. Lauren stepped out first. She was dressed in black and carried a flashlight. Two men climbed out after her. One carried bolt cutters. The other had a heavy toolbox. Just like my manager had warned me days earlier, she had brought a locksmith. Ethan stared at the screen without blinking. I don't believe this. Lauren confidently walked to the warehouse entrance. She smiled as she entered the access code she'd copied from the fake paperwork. The lock clicked. She looked back at the two men. I told you. The old man never suspected a thing. The locksmith pulled the door open. All three of them stepped inside, exactly where I wanted them. Less than 2 seconds later, bright floodlights exploded across the entire property. Red and blue emergency lights flashed from every direction. Sirens echoed across the marina. Hidden security barriers locked every exit. The moving truck couldn't leave. Neither could anyone inside. Lauren froze. The two men immediately dropped their tools. Within seconds, uniformed federal officers surrounded the warehouse. Hands where we can see them, on the ground. The locksmith obeyed instantly. The driver followed. Lauren didn't. She kept shouting, "There has to be some mistake. This is my father-in-law's property." An officer calmly replied, "Not tonight, ma'am." She was placed in handcuffs while cameras recorded everything. From inside the truck, officers recovered burglary tools, forged ownership papers, and equipment prepared to haul away whatever they believed was inside. There was no explaining any of it. Beside me, Ethan never said a word. He simply lowered his head. For several long minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, he whispered. I kept defending her. I thought everyone else misunderstood her. His voice cracked. I was the one who didn't see the truth. I placed my hand on his shoulder. Trust isn't weakness, son. It only becomes dangerous when the wrong person earns it. For the first time all night, he looked at me. His eyes were full of disappointment. Not in me, in himself. 3 days later, Lauren called him from the county jail. He answered only because he wanted to hear what she'd say. The moment she started claiming she had been set up and misunderstood, he stopped her. I heard the recording. I saw you at the warehouse. I know about my business account. There was silence. Then she began crying, begging, promising she could explain. Ethan quietly answered, No, you already did. He ended the call, blocked the number, and never answered another one. Within weeks, he filed for divorce. The missing money was documented through the investigation. His business slowly recovered once the accounts were secured. Customers returned. The pressure eased. For the first time in months, my son smiled again. Not because life had become easy, because the lies had finally ended. One Sunday afternoon, I invited him back to my house. We sat at the same kitchen table where his mother and I had spent countless evenings planning our future. I reached into my pocket and placed a small brass key in front of him. He frowned. What's this? A safety deposit box. He looked confused. I don't understand. I smiled. Your mother and I opened it years before she passed. Everything we wanted you to have has always been protected there. Separate from the business, separate from every property, separate from anyone else's reach. His eyes filled with tears. So, there was never anything valuable inside that warehouse? I laughed quietly. No. The only valuable thing in that building was the lesson it revealed. He stood up and hugged me harder than he had since he was a little boy. At that moment, I knew I'd kept the promise I made to his mother. Not to protect our money, to protect our son. That evening, I sat alone on the dock as the sun disappeared behind the harbor. The water was still. The breeze carried the same smell of salt and diesel that had followed me through most of my life. I raised my coffee mug toward the horizon and thought about Eleanor. Some people spend their lives chasing hidden fortunes. Others spend their lives building something far more valuable: character, patience, family. Greed always believes the prize is hidden behind a locked door. But the greatest treasures are usually the ones no thief can ever steal.